Did you grow up as the good kid, who always followed the rules, only to feel empty and lost as an adult? If that hit a nerve, stick around. Because today we're diving deep into something called the good child wound, a hidden scar that millions of people carry, without even realizing it. This isn't just about being obedient. It's about how trying to be perfect for everyone else might have quietly crushed your spirit. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand why you feel stuck, anxious, or disconnected, but you'll also discover how to start healing. And trust me, there's one surprising truth about this wound that will completely flip the way you see yourself. So let's start with the basics. What even is the good child wound? Picture this. You're a kid, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and all you want is for your parents to be proud of you. You clean your room without being asked, you never talk back, and you always say yes to whatever they want. Sounds like a dream kid, right? But here's the catch. Over time, you start to believe that love, approval, and safety only come when you're good. And good means putting everyone else's needs before your own, shutting down your own voice, and burying anything that might rock the boat. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't it normal to want to please your parents? Sure, to a point. But the good child wound happens when this goes too far. When your entire sense of self-worth gets tied to how well you perform for others. And here's the kicker. This doesn't just disappear when you grow up. It follows you into adulthood, showing up in ways you might not even notice. Let me tell you a story to make this real. I had a friend named Sarah, classic good kid. Straight A's, never missed a curfew, always the one her parents bragged about at family gatherings. But fast forward to her 30s, and Sarah was a mess. She couldn't say no to anyone at work. She'd take on extra projects until she burned out. In relationships, she'd stay with people who treated her like dirt, just because she didn't want to disappoint them. One day I asked her, "Sarah, what do you want?" And she just stared at me, blank-faced, and said, "I don't even know." That's the good child wound. In action, years of being good had completely disconnected her from her own desires. So how does this wound actually form? Let's break it down. When you're a kid, your brain is like a sponge, soaking up everything around you. Studies from developmental psychology, like those by Dr. Alice Miller, who wrote the book The Drama of the Gifted Child, show that children are hardwired to seek approval from their caregivers. It's a survival thing. If your parents are happy with you, you feel safe. But if you grow up in an environment where love feels conditional, where you only get praise when you're quiet, obedient, or perfect, your brain starts to wire itself around that. You learn to suppress your own needs, emotions, and even your personality, just to keep the peace. And here's where it gets tricky. This doesn't just happen in bad families. Sure, it's more obvious in homes where there's yelling, strict rules, or even abuse. But it can also happen in nice families, where parents might not even realize they're sending the message that you need to be perfect to be loved. Maybe they praised you for being so mature when you were just a kid, or maybe they leaned on you to be the easy child because they were stressed out with work or your siblings. Either way, the result is the same. You grow up feeling like your worth depends on how well you please others. Now let's talk about the damage this does. Because here's the thing. Being the good child might have helped you survive childhood, but it sets you up for some serious struggles as an adult. Here are the big ones. You lose touch with who you are. When you spend your whole life trying to be what others want, you stop asking yourself what you want. Over time, you might not even know what makes you happy, what your passions are, or what your boundaries are. It's like you're wearing a mask all the time, and you've forgotten what your real face looks like. That's you become a people pleaser. This is a huge one. People pleasing isn't just about being nice, it's about being terrified of conflict or rejection. You say yes to things you hate, you apologize for things that aren't your fault, and you bend over backwards to make everyone else happy, even if it means running yourself into the ground. A 2021, study from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that chronic people pleasers are more likely to experience anxiety, depression, and burnout. No surprise there, right? You feel guilty for having needs. Here's a fun test. Think about the last time you asked for help. Did it feel easy, or did it feel like you were being selfish? For good kids, asking for anything, whether it's time, support, or even just a break, can feel like you're doing something wrong. You might even feel guilty for having emotions, especially negative ones like anger or sadness, because you were taught to always be the happy one. You attract toxic relationships. This one stings, but it's true. When you're used to putting everyone else first, you become a magnet for people who take advantage of that. Whether it's a boss who piles on work, a friend who only calls when they need something, or a partner who disrespects you, you might find yourself stuck in relationships where you're giving everything and getting nothing back. And the worst part? You might not even see it as a problem because you've been trained to think that's just how love works. You feel empty even when you succeed. Here's the paradox of the good child wound. You might achieve all the things you're supposed to, like a great job, a nice house, or a picture-perfect family, but deep down, you still feel like something's missing. That's because all those achievements were for someone else's approval, not for your own joy. It's like climbing a ladder to the top, only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. Now at this point, you might be thinking, okay, this all sounds depressingly familiar, but how do I know if I really have this wound? Great question. Here are some signs to look out for. See how many of these feel true for you. You apologize all the time, even when you haven't done anything wrong. You feel anxious or guilty when you say no to someone. You have a hard time making decisions because you're always worried about what others will think. You feel like you're too much or not enough, no matter what you do. You secretly resent people even though you act nice to their face. You feel disconnected from your own emotions. Like you're just going through the motions. If more than a couple of those hit home, chances are you've got some version of the good child wound. But here's the good news. This isn't a life sentence. You can heal from this, and I'm going to show you how. But before we get to the healing part, let's talk about the biggest challenge you'll face on this journey. Introduce a problem challenge. Here's the hard truth. Healing the good child wound isn't as simple as just deciding to be yourself. Why? Because after years, maybe even decades of living for others, you might not even know who yourself is. And even if you do, the idea of putting your own needs first can feel terrifying. Like you're breaking some unspoken rule. You might worry that if you stop being the good one, people will stop loving you, or worse, they'll get mad at you. This fear of rejection or conflict is the biggest roadblock to healing, and it's why so many people stay stuck in people-pleasing mode, even when they know it's hurting them. Exploration development. So how do you get past this fear and start healing? Let's break it down into steps. Think of this as your roadmap to reclaiming your spirit. And don't worry. I'm not going to throw a bunch of fluffy advice at you like, just love yourself. These are practical, real-world steps, backed by psychology and stories from people who've been there. Step 1, acknowledge the wound. The first step is to admit that this wound exists. That might sound obvious, but it's harder than you think. A lot of good kids grow up thinking their childhood was fine because they didn't experience obvious trauma like abuse or neglect. But emotional wounds, like feeling unloved for who you really are, can be just as damaging. So, take a moment to reflect. Were you praised only when you were good? Did you feel like you had to hide parts of yourself to be loved? If the answer is yes, then it's time to stop brushing it off and start calling it what it is, a wound that needs healing. Here's a story to show you what this looks like in action. I read about a woman named Maria on a psychology blog. She was in her 40s, a successful lawyer, but she felt like a fraud. She realized that her whole life, she'd been chasing her parents' approval, even though they'd passed away years ago. One day in therapy, her therapist asked her to write a letter to her younger self, the little girl who tried so hard to be perfect. Maria wrote, "I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough." And she said that was the first time she truly acknowledged how much pain she'd been carrying. That acknowledgement was the first step to healing. Step 2, reconnect with your needs. Once you've acknowledged the wound, the next step is to figure out what you want, not what your parents, your boss, or society wants, but you. This is where things get tricky. Because if you've spent your whole life ignoring your needs, you might not even know where to start. Here's a simple exercise to help. Every day, ask yourself, what do I need right now? It could be something small, like I need a glass of water, or something bigger, like I need to tell my friend I can't help them move this weekend. The key is to practice listening to yourself, even if it feels awkward at first. And here's a pro tip. Don't just think about your physical needs, like food or sleep. Think about your emotional needs too. Do you need to feel heard? Do you need to feel safe? Do you need to feel like you're allowed to mess up? These are the needs that good kids often bury, but they're just as important. Fach. Step 3. Set boundaries, yes, even if it scares you. Now, here's the part that freaks most people out. Setting boundaries. If you're a people pleaser, the idea of saying no might make your stomach churn. But here's the thing. Boundaries aren't about being mean or selfish. They're about protecting your energy so you can show up as your best self. And the people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries, even if it takes them a little time to adjust. Let me give you an example. I had a client named Jake who was the good kid in his family, always the one his parents called when they needed help. But it got to the point where he was spending every weekend fixing their house, running their errands, and basically putting his own life on hold. One day, he decided to set a boundary. He told them, "I love helping you, but I can only come over one weekend a month because I need time for my own projects." At first, his parents were upset, and Jake felt guilty. But over time, they adjusted, and Jake said it was like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Here's a simple boundary-setting script you can use. I care about you, but I can't do X right now. Here's what I can do instead, Y. For example, I care about you, but I can't take on that extra project at work right now. Here's what I can do instead. I can help. Brainstorm ideas for 30 minutes, see? It's not about shutting people down, it's about finding a balance. Through step 4, embrace your bad side. This step is where things get fun. Part of healing the good child wound is learning to embrace the parts of yourself you've been taught to hide, like your anger, your messiness, or even your silliness. These are the parts that make you human, not a robot. And here's the surprising truth. I promised you earlier, those bad parts of you, they're not bad at all. In fact, they're often the key to your happiness and authenticity. Let me tell you about a guy named Tom, who I heard about in a podcast. Tom was the ultimate good kid, always polite, always responsible. But in his 30s, he started feeling restless, like he was living someone else's life. So he decided to do something crazy. He signed up for an improv comedy class, even though he was terrified of looking stupid. At first, he was awful at it. But over time, he realized that messing up and laughing at himself was the most freeing thing he'd ever done. He said, for the first time, I felt like I was allowed to be a mess, and it was amazing. So, ask yourself, what's the bad part of you that you've been hiding? Maybe it's your loud laugh, or your love of cheesy romance novels, or your secret dream of quitting your job to travel the world. Whatever it is, give yourself permission to let it out, even just a little bit. Step 5. Rewrite your definition of good. Finally, it's time to rethink what it means to be good. Because here's the thing, being good doesn't mean being perfect or selfless. It means being true to yourself, even if that means disappointing others sometimes. It means showing up for the people you love, but not at the expense of your own well-being. And most importantly, it means loving yourself, flaws and all. Here's a story to wrap this up. I read about a woman named Priya, who grew up as the good daughter in a strict family. She always did what her parents wanted, even choosing a career she hated to make them happy. But in her 50s, after years of feeling empty, she decided to rewrite her story. She quit her job, started painting, something she'd loved as a kid, but gave up because it wasn't practical, and told her family, "This is who I am, and I'm done pretending otherwise." At first, her family was shocked, but over time, they came to respect her. And Priya said, "For the first time, I feel like I'm living my own life, not someone else's." The climax key moment. Now here's the moment that ties it all together. The one truth that can set you free: you are not responsible for everyone else's happiness. Read that again. You are not responsible for everyone else's happiness. Your job is to live your life, not to be a supporting character in someone else's. And the moment you start believing that, everything changes. You'll feel lighter, braver, and more alive than you ever thought possible. Conclusion summary. So let's recap. The good child wound is what happens when you grow up believing that love and worth depend on being perfect and obedient. It can leave you feeling lost, anxious, and disconnected from yourself. But the good news is, you can heal. By acknowledging the wound, reconnecting with your needs, setting boundaries, embracing your bad side, and redefining what it means to be good, you can start to reclaim your spirit and live a life that's truly yours. It won't happen overnight, and it won't always be easy, but trust me, it's worth it. The call to action. If this hit home, hit that subscribe button for more videos on breaking, free from the patterns holding you back.